All right. So, Mark, tell the audience a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Mark Haney. I am the host of the Mark Haney Show. And this is a show that's about entrepreneurship and venture capital and winning. I'm also founding partner of the Growth Factory, which is a startup accelerator with an accompanying venture fund, and the Backyard Advantage.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, out of all those things, what would you say is taking most of your time? Like most of your energy, your time, your focus.
You know what? I love doing my show. We do it once a week, and it airs on Money 105.5. Then it's on podcast as well. And so it's not a huge time consumption, but it's fun to do. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to share stories of winning. And so I really enjoy it. But I think what I spend most of my time in is the Backyard Advantage, right? I mentioned the Growth Factory, which is we've got 100 investors, we've got 100 plus mentors, and we've invested into 34 companies in the last 17 months. And
Wow.
so that group of people, we have, I don't know how many corporate partners, but that group of people is what we call the Backyard Advantage. And we're all working together to help each other succeed. And it's all around the focus of entrepreneurship and driving economic development for the Sacramento region.
Okay. So entrepreneurship, the first thing that comes to mind right now in recent events is the Silicon Valley bank collapsing, right? So, what sort of effects do you think it has on like startups and entrepreneurship, that sort of event?
Yeah, I think that kind of event, we had a handful of portfolio companies that had money in that bank. And so they had some short-term chaos, but nobody lost a lot of money. But I do think that it'll have an effect on the confidence level with smaller banks. Even though the Silicon Valley Bank is like the 16th largest bank in the country, it's having a little bit of an effect on the confidence for the smaller, more regionally sized banks. And so we want to make sure that we have adequate availability of cash. And so if you're sitting on a lot of cash, there is some wisdom around making sure that it's not all lumped into one bank. But for startups, I think it's probably more than that, because the Silicon Valley Bank represented a nice lending institution for startups and provided different kind of services. So I think other banks like Five Star Bank here locally will end up stepping in and filling some of those gaps. And ultimately there'll be a short-term lack of confidence, but I think it'll come back around. But more broadly than that, the overarching economy is filled with a lot of uncertainty right now. And so venture capital as an asset class is being a little bit more cautious about deploying their capital.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I saw this funny meme on Twitter. Elon Musk posted it. And it's the classic meme where there's like a guy and he's like wondering which button to press. There's two buttons. And one button is like putting your monies in banks, but then banks collapsing. And the other button is putting your money in Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's collapsing. So it's like a hard choice,
That's funny. Well, what's interesting is right now we're seeing Bitcoin rising. Not all this uncertainty. There's obviously a risk appetite, and some of that money is going into Bitcoin, and we're seeing that climb. But I think overall there's still money on the sidelines, but they're just waiting to deploy it. And because you can get 4 or 5% having the money in the bank right now, why not just hit pause for a second, shore up your assets? A lot of money is being put into cash right now, waiting for opportunity, because it's coming. I think we'll see consolidation within the startup community and probably a lot of opportunity for those that have cash.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, that's when I think of like the advice you just gave is like, hey, making sure you don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? And all in one bank, maybe put into different baskets just in case one collapses. So, as an investor working with so many entrepreneurs, like what other sort of like, I mean, you've seen many fail, you've seen many succeed. What other like common mistakes would you say the startups that fail do? Like any pitfalls that startups can avoid, the mistakes that the failed ones do?
There are a lot of them. There's a lot of problems, but I think there's really 3 questions you've got to get right if you want to build a successful company. Number 1 is, how compelling is your vision? If you can get that question right, that can get you off to on the right foot, because nobody builds a truly great company alone. And so one of the biggest challenges that I see for founders is they don't build the right founding team. Some try to go it alone. Others go along with less than stellar co-founders or less than stellar teammates. And at the beginning, you really need to have a group of people that is bought into that vision. And so if your vision is not exciting, then people aren't going to come along and help you. So that's number 1. That's got to be right. In fact, you see people quit occasionally on all kinds of things in their life. It doesn't have to be a startup. It could be anything. And some of the reason is because their dream is just not that exciting. And so they don't want to stay with it long term because it's not that compelling. So I'd say number 1, you got to get that vision right. But number 2, this is the classic challenge that I think we all run into, but startups are more greatly affected by it because they're so fragile. But what are you going to do with what you got, right? How are you going to allocate your resources? How are you going to allocate your time? Because we have all these strengths and we have weaknesses and we have opportunities, but founders tend to go off in 10, 15, 20 different directions because we're entrepreneurial. And so we chase shiny objects. And so narrowing down and focusing on what's most important now is something that I see founders failing to do in many cases. I think we all do. But the more we can navigate that decision, what are you going to do with what you got, the better off that you're going to be. And I think that's important for a family. That's important for the president of FedEx, right? We've got to get those decisions right because allocation of resources is everything. Starting with you, what are you going to do? What am I going to do today to help the cause? And we don't get those decisions right a lot of the times. And then the other thing that I think what I see pretty often is a lack of commitment. So we have people that have decided on what they want to do, but their commitment level is not enough because what happens with people, I think it's just like a workout or something like that. Hey, I'm going to go on a diet. Okay, well, it's easier if you can make it a lifestyle, right? I'm going to start working out. It's easier if you can make it a lifestyle. And if you decide that you're going to build a company, it's better just to make it a commitment. It's just what I do. It's what I'm doing. And so I think that that commitment level is everything.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you with all those points. The second one, though, could be a little tricky because, there's like, I guess, another sort of perspective where some people think, okay, well, if I am juggling 5 balls, right? And let's say 2 of them drop, I still have 3, So you hear some people with that sort of philosophy. And then, at the same time, there's a balance of like making sure you can focus on one thing and do it really well before you have all those things. So how do people balance that? How do you know when you should maybe experiment with 5 different balls and juggling it versus just focusing on one first and doubling down on that?
Well, it's interesting. So you said the second one. So what are you going to do with what you got? Sounds like that's what you're talking to. You're in marketing, you do A/B testing, and you need enough data in order to place your bets. And I think that that's sort of the same message that I would give to a startup founder is, and what are you going to do with what you got? You got to test a few things, and the ones that are working, once you know it's working, now it's time to go all in or bet bigger on that opportunity. And I think I can tell you, unless they're all working great, you probably shouldn't be juggling 5 balls. You should be looking to get one right first. Right. And instead of juggling, if you're doing some A/B testing with 5 different opportunities, okay, I can see that as a way of doing it. But the more that you can narrow in on one vision, one opportunity, and then attack that. And if it happens to be an opportunity that most people don't see, right? It's an opportunity that most people might bet against, but you know firsthand because you've been in the trenches working on it, and you're betting big on it. Now you're going to have a home run,
right?
Because nobody else, you're the first one in, and so that's where you want to be, is making that discovery on something that most people would bet against, but you happen to know because you've been working it.
Yeah, you know, that's really interesting you say that because yesterday I had, do you know his name is Matthew Kennedy Stewart? Yeah,
I don't know if I do or not.
Yeah, he was the chairman of the global board of directors of the entrepreneurs, EO entrepreneurs.
EO?
Yeah,
okay.
EO. Yeah. So he did that for a few years, and one of the things he was saying is exactly what you said. It's like, you know, he had a construction company, and then he started doing chemicals. And he's like, and then the chemicals one failed because he knew nothing about chemicals, you know? So it's like, stay within your core competencies and then do it really well before you go out and start something else. So,
yeah, I think that's true. I mean, one of the things that I think it's important to do is I got a big dry erase board behind me, and, you know, think about, you know, you can do these SWOT analysis. A lot of people don't take time to really think about what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what they can get paid for, what the world needs. They don't take time to put that on a board and think about it. They just hear a shiny object. And I'm not saying that that's what happened with the construction guy. He saw chemicals as an opportunity, didn't know anything about it. But if you can draw the dots to something that you are good at, that you love, that the world needs, and that you can get paid for, now you've got something that could be the winning combination.
Absolutely. I think that's so huge, is understanding your strengths, understanding what you're good at, and you know, understanding with your personality type, what would you really excel at, you know, because everybody, you know, like a storyteller or someone that's captivating probably wouldn't enjoy sitting behind a screen crunching numbers all day, right? They might be miserable. So having the self-awareness to understand, you know, who you are. So personally for you, like, you know, when I think of you, I think of like high energy, you know, someone who's out there attacking the world, you know, going, like almost like an athlete, you know? So like, have you found sort of, you know, how did you find yourself? You know, how did you understand your personality and what you're good at?
Well, I appreciate that. When you don't have talent, you bring energy. So I have, my mom told me that when I was a kid. So I tend to bring the energy, and then hopefully I get good at certain things along the way. But there's a lot of things I'm not good at. And I think having the awareness to know what you're not good at is helpful. And then putting those people in your life that can help you shore up your weaknesses, because I agree, play to your strengths, but realize you're not going to do anything truly great on your own. You need people to help you, especially if you're building a business. Nobody builds a truly great company alone. You need people to help you do that. And so along the way, I've done a lot of this visioning with myself, and what I think what you like doing oftentimes is something that you can get good at, even if you're not naturally good at that. So I like creating opportunity for people. I built some security camera companies, and we sold them years ago. And along the way, we had like 300 employees, but people would start in the company, and then as the company grew and as they did better within the company, they found opportunity. Sometimes it was buying a house. Sometimes it was working in an exciting occupation that they wouldn't have been into before. Other guys were becoming millionaires. And when these opportunities happen for people, for me, that was rewarding. And so that's really what I'm on a mission to do. So I created a mission statement around creating opportunity for my family, for my friends and my community. And as they succeed, I succeed. So that's really my North Star. And I did it by just doing some soul searching and some dreaming. I took a summer and, you know, with a dry erase board, and decided where I wanted to go, and kind of created a vision for where I wanted to take it. And that vision has been kind of manifesting over the last several years.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit more about that, that soul searching, the soul searching summer where you had to
soul searching. That's what it was, actually.
Right. How did it like come to you? Like, did you read a book? Like, how did you decide to do that?
Interesting question. So I sold my companies and I stayed with the company through a transition. We're the largest security camera distributor in the country, and we merged with another large distributor, and simultaneously private equity came in. And so I helped with that transition process. And then I left the company because, I just wanted to do something else. It was feeling a little bit corporate. So I ended up leaving. I think for the first time, I had some time on my hands. So what do I want to do? And it's kind of interesting to be unemployed in a certain way. Now, I still owned a handful of companies, but I wasn't directly running them. So I was more like an investor. And so that was fun. So I doubled down on the security industry, and I ended up investing into a real estate company, into a construction company. And then I started my podcast and my radio show. And that period ended up becoming sort of like, I transformed from being a security camera salesperson to really somebody that wanted to help Sacramento entrepreneurs, because I've always believed in building from the inside out. So get yourself right? Number one, get your family right, and then get your community right, get your neighborhood right, get your community right. So that's really, I took sort of that philosophy that summer and said, that's what I want to do, is kind of work from the inside out. And that led to the mission statement. And along the way, I realized that helping other entrepreneurs was really the kind of opportunity that I enjoyed from a business standpoint. From a family standpoint, I'm building a family compound. It's called HaneyBiz. And so that's creating this incredible opportunity for my family and me and my wife to sort of do some discovery about how to build the strongest family possible. And the most magical place on earth outside Disneyland is this family compound we call HaneyBiz. And so that's really, my vision for my family and for my community vision. I really want to ignite an entrepreneurial revolution right here in the hometown I love. And we're doing that through the Backyard Advantage, this tribe of people that I've rallied to help the startup community and all these startups we're invested into.
Interesting.
So it's been more than the summer. The summer was just the kickoff.
Right. I see. So it's a process over time.
I think so. But I think one of the first things we have to do is create a North Star, right? Where do we want to go? And the more that we can imagine what that looks like, for me, it looked like successful business partners in my backyard that all love each other, right? Create that synergy. My family of security companies, there's a lot of love there. And we saw synergy within this family of companies. And so I decided I wanted to create my own Keiretsu, which is a Japanese term for like a family of companies. I saw that in the security industry with Sanyo and Panasonic and other Japanese companies in the electronics industry were actually related to each other.
Wow.
Creating this Keiretsu. And I did that a little bit within my security companies. Now, what if we could do that with Sacramento companies? And so that's really what I'm working on.
Interesting. That's awesome. So, so I think that's huge, with like understanding that you're not going to figure it out all at once. I think a lot of young kids, and sometimes it might be society that's putting pressure on them. It's like, you have to figure out what you're going to do by the time you're 21, and like, it's a process, it's like, we're putting so much pressure, and all these kids are feeling like they need to figure it out. But like, understanding patience, that things take time, and things are going to evolve over time, will take a lot of that stress away from them,
Well, there's nothing like hard work that gets rid of stress, because if you dive into something, go get a job and outwork all your teammates, the stress level goes down. You go to the gym and get a great workout, the stress level gets down. I think when you sit around and wonder what you're going to do and worry, well, there's the stress, because you're not doing anything. Take some action, and all of a sudden, opportunity comes to you that you didn't expect.
Right, exactly. So I'm curious about that family compound. I think that's awesome. You don't really hear that often, creating a place where all your family can be at. So How do you balance that though? Because, like you hear these kids, right? These kids that resent their parents, and they resent their parents because their parents put pressure on them to do things that they might want to do, but they don't want to displease their parents, right? So they might not say no. It's like, hey, you have to be a doctor. And then like they go through all these years, 10 years, 12 years of being a doctor, and they figure out they're miserable, and they start to resent their parents, right? Because their parents pressured them and forced them. So how do you balance that? Like, how do you balance that of like having a vision for your family, but not being a little too aggressive to where, they don't give you feedback?
Oh, well, I think that's the key to building any relationship, is having it be a two-way street, and they need to have ownership in this process, and ownership. And now my kids are 35 and 36 years old, and I have 8 grandchildren. So they want to be out there, right? I got lucky. My kids don't resent me, and they're great parents as well. So I've got these 8 grandkids, and it's kind of a fun tribe. And so there's, I don't sense this resentment, because we've created this sense of ownership and this pride of what we're building together. I think that's true within a company too. If you come down as the hammer, directing, over pushing within a business, your employees might sort of resent that a little bit. Right. It's got to be sort of a shared vision, shared opportunity, shared purpose, and maybe everybody feels this ownership in the outcome. And I think if a parent is out there putting this expectation on a child that's it's an adult child, well, the adult child kind of needs to grow up at some point and decide what they want to do. And that's probably natural at some point, that you flee the roof. You no longer have to take orders from your parents when you get to a certain age. And it's kind of a rite of the passage, and it's kind of growing up. And I think that I would tell that person that don't need your parent for financial support. So go out and get some wins, go out and build yourself some freedom through some wins in a business or through a good job. And you can do what you want once you've got that freedom. But if you're still on mommy's titty, then maybe you do need to take orders.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Building the responsibility for yourself and being able to go out there and do things on your own without, relying too much on your parents.
Yeah. Go show them what you can do. Go prove it.
Right. Absolutely.
Prove it.
Yeah. So your son, Marcus, right? He, I guess he proved it to you, right? He went to Afghanistan and
remember, yes.
Yeah. So, and then I know you guys have a really good relationship with each other. I think I saw you guys, working together on Allegiant Giving, right? And so helping veterans. So like, I often hear that, like, especially in politics, like, oh, we got to take care of our veterans. We got to take care of our veterans. And it seems like nobody's doing anything. It's like all talking points, So like, what does that look like? What does taking care of veterans mean?
Well, I think that's a good question, because first of all, my son, Marcus, he's a Marine, went to Afghanistan, as you mentioned, was wounded in action, shot in the leg. He's okay, so don't worry about that. But I think he came back a stronger person. And he now is, I would say, helping veterans, but I think taking care of them isn't the way that I would characterize what we do. Because veterans are America's finest people. They're people that have this courage and this selflessness, and they've gone to help our country when most people would not do that. So when they get out of the military, most of the time they don't need to be taken care of, but I think they might need to be guided to some great opportunities. So that's really what we do, is we are building America's finest workforce through military veterans. And so as they get out of the military, there's this transitioning process where they are deciding what they want to do. And we help them with the training programs that they might want to be thinking about so that they can put themselves into a dream job. Sometimes that's entrepreneurship. Other times that might be something rebuilding America's infrastructure. But in any case, these are great human beings that really don't need to be taken care of. They just need maybe a little bit of a guidance that can help them to get back in the game in the best way possible and unleash their potential.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, giving them a new purpose, because their purpose was going out in war, and defending the country. And then now they come home, and I could imagine it's like, what do I do? Like, it's like a lot of confusion, almost like you lose a sense of purpose.
Yeah, and luckily we're in a peacetime for the most part right now. And like when my son was wounded, I mean, he was in the most dangerous place in the world, firefights and bombs going off and all that. He was in a bad spot. Most people aren't in that spot, but many people have still made that sacrifice or made that commitment to our country. So when we first started Allegiant and helping veterans, we were dealing with combat wounded veterans, and they have a whole set of needs that are almost unimaginable for most of us, right? Blowing up with no leg, people losing legs and losing limbs and seeing their brothers die in action, right? There's a whole set of challenges that they faced. Now we aren't dealing with that as much. Now we're dealing a little bit more with maybe just a feeling of solitude, where I've had this great job where I was helping change the world. And now I'm out after several years, and it's time to figure out something new. And they do, I think, in many cases, need to find their purpose. So I think you're right on. But many of them want to do something that's as cool as being in the military. So they don't want to just come and work for some minimum wage job or something like that. They want to do a great job where they can utilize their leadership skills and the other kinds of things that they can do that most people might not understand is possible.
Have you found a correlation of like what they would be great at? Like you said that it's not a minimum wage job. Have you seen like maybe an industry or a specific role where they're like will really excel at?
I think different industries. I think it's all across the board for sure. But I think some of the common strengths that we want for any employee, whether you're going to be in construction, whether you're going to be really anything, a police officer, you need to have people that work well as a team, as a teammate. You need to have people that can think on their feet, right, and improvise when the challenges happen and they're unexpected, and that people look up to. And a lot of times that starts with courage. It takes the courage to kind of put yourself out there as a great teammate, because I see, as a guy that's led businesses and teammates before, my best teammates were the ones that are willing to take orders, but they'll also stand up to the boss, right? If they can't be the type of employee that shows up, at 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock and punches a time card and sort of shuts it off and doesn't care anymore. We want the type of people that are engaged to try to make the entity better. And many times that means standing up to authority in a positive way that helps get the ball advanced for the organization. So I think people getting out of the military have been challenged with that, right? They have to take orders because there's a strict chain of command, but they're also challenged to advance the mission. And so you have to be able to speak up for yourself.
Right. Absolutely. So you're mentioning that sentence where you said that, your son was like out in war, being shot at, bombs, people's limbs missing. That gave me like a visceral feeling, because I have a son. I mean, he's 2, but, I couldn't even imagine him going out and fighting like that. So was it hard for you, like knowing that your son was being shot at? And naturally for me, I'm like, I might feel like I want to go, I want to go over there, take a gun with me and protect my son and be alongside him. So how did you cope with that, as a father?
Yeah, that was one of the more challenging times. I could say that it brought my wife and I closer. We've been married 38 years. This was, 10 years ago when he was 11 years ago, something like that, when he was in Afghanistan. But during that window of time, it was scary times. I remember we were fortunate enough to become friends with Marcus's friends. And so as they were all deploying, we rented out the restaurant in 29 Palms, California, and we got his Marine buddies together and the wives and everybody. And I rented out the whole restaurant and bought dinner for everybody and was able to give them sort of a pregame pep talk the night before. And, you know, we hugged each other and, you know, a lot of tears, some laughter. And, you know, I got a sense to who the people were that were fighting alongside with him, beside him. And I knew there was something special in that group of people that did give me some amount of comfort. But my son, my grandson was born while Marcus was in Afghanistan. So Marcus had a kid while he was gone.
Wow.
And so that was kind of a challenge. You know, he's on our mind the whole time, and a challenging thing happened. But I was helping veterans already at that point. So I was working with wounded vets during that period of time. And so I got to be thinking about him a lot while I was working with these veterans. And it was kind of interesting. He was shot in June 7th. And in May, I was in San Diego and I was working with wounded vets. We were playing wheelchair basketball together at Balboa Medical Facility. And this is the Wounded Warriors, working with the Wounded Warrior Project. And this was the weekend before Memorial Day. And 2 weeks later, we got the phone call that Marcus had been shot. And so he ultimately had 4 surgeries, and he ended up coming back to that same hospital that I was at 2 weeks earlier in San Diego. And so my son was in that same place, and it was so surreal to be for my son to be a wounded warrior and being with this set of wounded warriors that I had been helping just weeks earlier. And so I'd say it was really a surreal time, and we didn't get to talk to him a lot, but when we did, it was, we knew that it was a challenging time. That anyway, I could share more, but
yeah,
it's not like sending your kid off to college, right? A lot of people freak out when their kid goes off to college, and this is a little bit different. This isn't. We knew where they were going. We knew people who had already got killed in the area where he was going. It was at the height of the conflict.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. I mean, it's like I try to put myself in your shoes. It's like, I would probably be thinking about him nearly all day, like, is he still alive? Is he, is he okay?
The first time, it's interesting because you do things to try to take your mind off it. And then you do things that put your mind on it. First thing we did, and it wasn't to take the mind off it. We have a place in Cabo. We like to go to Cabo San Lucas. And so he leaves to go to Afghanistan, and the family goes to Cabo. And I get the call in the middle of the night while we're in Cabo, and I hadn't talked to him since he had been gone, and so he was in Afghanistan. And I said, okay, so how, I was kind of nervous because first time I talked to him, I was laying in bed with my wife, and are you okay? And yeah, I'm like, is it scary? And he says, only when they're shooting at us. And that was a pretty sobering moment. And that was probably about a week or two into his deployment. And so that really set the tone. Then his son was born a little while later. And so I think anytime I was around a person that reminded me of my son, it really brought back, and certain music, it brought back my son's memory. And so there's some special relationships that were created throughout that period of time.
Yeah. It seemed like, you coped with it in a way that you're still trying to help, in some sort of capacity, right? Like helping veterans, wounded veterans, even though you can't help your son directly, you could still help other people that were affected by the war, so. And then also bringing the families together and, staying positive and building that relationship to support each other, that support system. So, I think that's very courageous of you, on your end, and thoughtful of you on your end.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was the most humbling moment. This is an interesting thing too, because most people have never been there. So I rented out the restaurant. I was there giving the football coaching speech, and next morning, they all get on the buses, right? And they're backing up their gear to get on the buses. And it's, a lot of tears, a lot of the families are there kind of with the send off. And there's hundreds of Marines getting on these buses to get to the airport so they can go. And it was the most humbling moment of my life, because there I am back with the women and the children and the old people, while the real men are going off to fight. And that's a very humbling thing. Most people have never sat there or stood there, and you see the people where they're going, and you're out there with the women and children, the people that can't do it or haven't had the opportunity to raise their hand and get in the game. And that's a humbling thing to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you feel like you were a lesser man?
Yeah.
And how did you, cope with? I mean, I hope you don't feel that way. Do you still feel that way sometimes? Like, how did you cope with that?
I do. I feel like that's America's finest. I feel like entrepreneurs are the heroes of the American economy. So I have entrepreneurs at the highest level. They take risks. They make sacrifices. They, they put it all off on the lines so that they can create opportunity and figure out a way to change the world. So I have entrepreneurs at this on this pedestal. I have people who have fought for our freedom at a much higher pedestal. Those are the true heroes. So I guess what we do in life when we aren't in a position, when we're part of the old people or part of the people that aren't qualified to go off and fight, we do what we can. And so I help, I do what I can, right? I think we all just do what we can. I have a little experience in small business, so I do what I can for the small business community. And, that's how I live with myself. And, and it's rewarding, because I'm seeing really good things happening. And we help the military veterans, and it's rewarding to be able to do that when you're not in position to be on the front line.
Yeah, and it's great that you have, you've actually felt humbled by that. Some people, if they're too into themselves, or their ego, is in the way, they might not feel that sort of feeling. So it seemed like, you were able to check your ego and really understand that, hey, I'm humbled by this experience, and, what can I do to help support my community?
Well, there was probably, 500 family members there. I think we were all humbled. Everybody had that same feeling, and maybe as a guy, right? Because if I saw something happen and some lady getting, pushed around by a bum out there outside my office, I would have to step in and do something about it. That's what a man does. But this is a different thing. These people are super qualified people, and they're who we want on the front lines protecting us. And if you aren't man enough, it's time to admit it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had, and that's one of the reasons why I admire you so much, Mark. You are, you're humble. You're someone that has a strong vision. You have high energy. You're a people person. You bring people together. So, and you have this strong sense of self-awareness, right? So, those are qualities in a great leader, and someone I could see a governor, someone that exemplifies that.
You're being a little too kind, Phong, but I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. And I'm not into politics.
Right. I know you'd rather stick to entrepreneurship.
But thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So let's say you were though, just for fun, what would you do to fix, whether it be California or Sacramento, besides entrepreneurs, bringing more entrepreneurship, helping veterans, guiding them towards the right direction after they come back from war. What else would you do to fix California? What are problems you see within California and Sacramento, and what would you do to fix it?
Entrepreneurs solve the world's biggest problems. It's one of my markisms, and it could be disease, it could be security, it could be convenience. Entrepreneurs in the private sector end up solving these problems. So I guess from an overarching standpoint, I would identify the issues, whether it be homelessness or anything else that we're working on. And I would tend to work towards bringing the private sector in to help solve those problems through either public-private partnerships to work on those problems, or get them out of the government's hands. Because what ends up happening with the government, it's too big and it becomes very bureaucratic. That can even happen on the private sector with big corporations. But entrepreneurs can get in there and wrestle these problems to the ground and solve them. And when there's risk associated with it, with an upside, you get a different kind of approach to solving problems. So I definitely would lean toward bringing the private sector in to help solve some of these challenges. You name a challenge, and I would probably figure out a way to bring the private sector in.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. You know, bringing people that are problem solvers, you know, people that are not just there to, let's say, stay in power, you know, they're incentivized to stay in power and govern. It's like, hey, people that are literally solving problems every single day. How can we get those people involved in solving, you know, the state problems or local problems as well?
You bet. And if their lawmakers create an opportunity an environment for entrepreneurs to thrive, right? A little bit lower regulation in many cases, easier to get through the bureaucratic system to get licensing and all these different things that we have to do as business people. These are things that if we can make it easy for us to work hard, then, you know, we're going to have a more, efficient economy, which ultimately will drive a lot of positive outcomes and create a lot of freedom for people, a lot of wealth.
Absolutely. And there's definitely a necessity for lawmakers or people in power to be humble, you know, to understand that they might not have all the answers. And if something is not being, you know, solved for a long period of time, it's like even a company, you know, if like you have this problem and you can't solve it, it's like maybe it's a good idea to bring other people, you know, who have solved it in the past, or maybe have, maybe expertise in that, and get their opinion, you know, and get their take on how to best solve it.
I agree. And I think you see different, you know, the government's got these different layers, right? We got the local government, and they're at least in, you know, the towns I live in, they're not quite as, it's not like the Republican Democrat thing where it's super divisive, like it is on the national stage. But I think, you know, you can see that when people want to work together for the common good, that it's really good for the town. I'm in Rockland. Rockland's a very well-run community. Roseville's very well-run, responsible growth, and lower crime, great place to live. And you can see what's happened is people from all over from the Bay Area, for sure, from Silicon Valley and San Francisco and LA, they're moving here. We're growing in the Sacramento region because we've managed things well. We've created a great place to live, despite what California might be doing in terms of being overregulated, maybe overtaxed. And, a lot of people are leaving California, but Sacramento's growing. And I think that's because of better than average local leadership.
Yeah, isn't that funny how it works though? It's like supply and demand. It's like, you know, if you have poor leadership, if you have poor policies, people leave the company, right? California, I think I saw that for the very first time since, what was it, the 1900s or 1800s, that we're losing people. People are leaving California. And so it's kind of like a red flag. It's like, hey, why are people leaving? You know, it's like, is it the high cost of living? Is it, maybe policies that, that are too much for them to, to stay? And then, so now, like, it makes you more competitive. It's like, okay, I need to step up my game to like fix these problems to bring people back in. It's simply supply and demand.
I think so. And I think when COVID triggered a lot of that, kind of a wake-up call where people decided, hey, maybe this is the time where I should be thinking about where I want to locate. Where would I want to locate? And for me, I want to be around people that I care about. So I'm here in the place that I grew up. But I think other people looked at the world, where they want to live. And a lot of people chose Sacramento because we've got great people. It's not all the weather and the proximity to the Bay Area and to the mountains. That's part of it. But a lot of it it's the people that are here. And it's, I feel like it's kind of like the Midwest. It's where kind of a small town, even though we're not the smallest region in the world, we can come together more like a small town than I think a lot of other cities our size. And I think that's beginning to happen in the entrepreneurial community. And so I feel like in many ways, Sacramento's coming together, at least in the business community and the entrepreneurial community. And I think that that's attractive to people, that we can get along. But I think the other reason people are leaving California is because our taxes are too damn high, right? Taxes are high, regulation is high, but it's also it's a great place to, to work on cool cutting edge products because of the talent that we have here.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like, there's still so many positives, even though like taxes are high and, regulation is high. It's a great place to still do business. There's high demand. Like you said, there's great talent.
So what are you going to do with what you got, right? You look around, I'm not leaving. What am I going to do with what I got, right? So it's, so I look at the people that want to leave, go ahead, see you later. But those that are staying, let's work together and figure it out. What do we got? What are we going to do with what we got? Let's work together and figure it out and to make this a better place.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's definitely, a balance, like I know some people are like, that there's two sides, there's some people that say, hey, we need to just stick with where we are at and then figure out how to solve these problems together. And then some people are like, hey, let's just leave. And then they'll figure it out, that what they're doing is really bad. And so hopefully that teaches them a lesson,
Well, there's another group of people too, right? If you're leaving, get the hell out, right? That's the way I look at it. If you're staying, be a part of the solution.
Right.
What ends up becoming the third group of people are the people that sit back as the armchair quarterbacks and just start bitching about it. And that's when that's another group of people that exist out there. And I don't know what we're going to do. They either need to, get off go ahead and take a leave or jump in the game and try to start fixing it. And so that's my thing is don't complain, fix. Be a part of something that is fixing it. And we all do and I think we have a social kind of a moral responsibility to do that. And I think we have a moral responsibility or an ethical responsibility to be self-aware. Think about, we all have gifts, right? We all have something we're good at. I suck at a lot of stuff, but had some success bringing people together. But we have an ethical responsibility to look within ourselves and see what we can bring to the party to make the place better. We do. Right.
Yeah.
And that means unleashing our potential, your potential, Phong.
Absolutely.
And I know you're doing that. You're helping people to, you're a great marketing person and you're bringing your potential to businesses. So we're working on some of the same things, and you understand marketing in a way that most don't. And for you to be able to bring that is for me, I think that's super helpful. But I think it's incumbent on you, and I'm not saying you're not doing this, but it's incumbent on people like you to bring it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like it's important to use your skills and your talents, your strengths to help your community thrive, and it's, especially as a citizen, but also like as a person, how
don't resent your parents. Don't talk about how bad we are. Don't woe is me, cry baby about it. Do something. Take some action.
Absolutely. 100%. So what are you excited about, as far as like the next generation of entrepreneurship, like this is going to be Gen Z, right? Gen Z is coming up. And some people like bag on Gen Z is like, oh, TikTok is rotting their brains. They're spending so much time on TikTok, on Instagram, they're impatient. They want things now. Like, what are your thoughts on then the future leaders coming up? I mean, you have grandkids, right? And
yeah, that's what they said about us in the 70s. Their hair's too long, these damn kids, lazy, all that. Look, every generation is going to be who they're going to be. And so to me, these are the assets of our society, right? These fresh minds that understand technology better than I do, and they have creativity that I don't have, and we need to figure out a way to back the best and the brightest in order to make the world a better place. And most of that, a lot of that's going to happen through building entrepreneurial teams and creating really cool stuff. So I'm super excited about that. And one of the things I think that helps me to grow is the way I look at it is if we're not growing, we're dying, right? So if I'm not growing, I'm dying. Yep. And so I get to live vicariously through the most ambitious, driven, cutting edge entrepreneurs in the world, and certainly within Sacramento. I get to invest into them. I get to learn from them. Sometimes I get to help with a little old man wisdom. And what am I excited about? I'm excited about being around this group of people, and the group of people that is helping this group of people, right? The Backyard Advantage, our investors are the people that have, many of them have built Sacramento. They've built great companies in Sacramento. We have leaders of Sacramento as part of this tribe, right? You think about all the people that have been on my show, and, all the leaders of Sacramento have said, Mark, I want to help you out. I love what you're doing. Yeah, I'll pitch in. I'll put some money into this thing to help get it off the ground, right? So we're putting our money where our town is, and then we're redeploying that into these startups, bringing in mentors that have built and sold companies, people who have been there, done that. These are the type of people that are coming in, helping these millennials, right? Or these entrepreneurial people. They're not all millennials, but Gen Zs, and there's probably even some baby boomers in there. But we're helping these people because they've got great ideas and they're driven. So I'm excited about being part of this tribe and seeing it come together, because as I said at the beginning, at the heart of this is love. At the heart of this is love and respect for entrepreneurship, and not just love, that fuzzy feeling that we get when we really care about somebody. Love is also an action, right? So people are taking action, acts of love that are helping entrepreneurs, opening up doors to make it easier to make a sale, easier to get your startup funded, easier, taking the friction out of the challenge. Sometimes it's wisdom, but a lot of times it's connections. Sometimes it's tough love, right? Sometimes it's like, hey man, think twice, measure twice, cut once type thing. Other times it's some basic, common sense stuff. But you know what? It's all for the idea that we care. We're all working for the same mission here, to help these entrepreneurs to succeed, and we all have skin in the game, which is the beauty. That's the difference, is waking up to the fact that we all have skin in the game. Not even the people that haven't invested, right? The civic leaders like the city of Roseville, the city of Rockland, El Dorado County, Sierra College, the Sacramento Kings, SMUD. We all realize that as Sacramento wins, we win. And who's going to solve this? Entrepreneurs.
Right. Absolutely. That's awesome, Mark. Yeah, I love your vision for Sacramento. It's very obvious. You can tell immediately how much love and passion you have in making our town incredible, making our town vibrant and thriving. So, with Growth Factory, what is sort of like the long-term vision? Like, are you guys going to be, I know like some of the things that you mentioned right here, but anything else, that you guys are really eyeballing?
Yeah, well, the sky's the limit for the Growth Factory. Our commitment with Fund 1 is to invest into 100 companies over 4 years. We're already invested into 34 in the last 18 months. As you know, I did a lot of startup investing prior to launching the Growth Factory. So it's really cool to see success breeds success. So some of the companies I invested into prior have had some real success, and they're now jumping in as mentors and investors into the Growth Factory. So it's cool to see, this kind of like a compounding effect, if you will, of success. That's beginning to happen. So really the long-term vision for the Growth Factory is to see these entrepreneurs that not only have success, they love each other, and they're part of the cause. They're good in the backyard, right? They get why we do this. We don't invest into people that don't have that don't care about our town, right? We're relentlessly local, and we invest if you share the vision for what we're trying to accomplish, and kind of like we're helping pay it forward, but when you have your success, it's time for you to step up and help the next one in line and help drive growth in the region. So I really think there'll be a compounding effect that will take decades to happen. So when you talk about long-term, that's what I see happening, that love will just start, people will start opening their eyes to the fact that we can actually help each other and transform our town. Mm. So at the beginning stages of that. Medium term, as we invest into these 100 companies, we see a lot of, we see some of those beginning to succeed, and we'll probably start another fund eventually that so we can keep investing into these startup companies and really help them thrive. Mm-hmm. But it's also the type of concept that can be taken outside of Sacramento. I think any town like Sacramento, I mean, if we can do it here in a government cow town like Sacramento, you can do it in any town. And what you need is the backyard advantage. And so that's what I'm working on. Is I'm writing a book about the backyard advantage. So I'll be on a TED Talk talking about the backyard advantage. I want to make sure that other communities can take this model and this concept and this theory about building the most connected community in the world for local entrepreneurs in their community. So this thing we're capturing the methodology and the some of the processes associated with how to do this so that other towns can do this as well for the good of America.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. What a great way to end. You know, it's you're such a huge inspiration, Mark, for myself and also for many people in the community. So I'm so grateful, you know, for having you on.
Honored to be on the show.
Yeah. So where can people find you?
Yeah, you can go to Instagram at the Mark Haney. The Growth Factory is growthfactory.us. You can definitely, I'm on Granite Drive. So if you're a local listener in the Sacramento area, I'm in Rockland, along I-80 on Granite Drive. You know, I get a place on the freeway in between Tesla and Porsche. And it says the Growth Factory on the outside. So come up and say hello.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for listening. See you in the next episode.
Bye. All right. Thanks, Phong.